incredibly meaningless to be in a world where you push people away just because what they think is so different from what you think. I mean, you know, it's like when you go to school, the teacher is always telling you something that is different from what you think just because you were ignorant. And it doesn't stop. You keep learning throughout your entire life. And the point is to stay open to it. You may reject it, but if you close yourself off from it, there's no possibility for growth.
Well, exactly. The world system tries to divide, balkanize, and keep us apart. Color, race, ethnic, religion, because everybody's really the same, unless you're part of that tiny psychopathic predator group, and they're scared of us getting together, just like in the movie, is it Ants or is it Bug's Life? It's Bug's Life, where he says if you let one ant stand up, they might all stand up, and this is really a system to suppress our free will. And I saw a quote where you said, you know, David Icke has such a loving soul. And I've gotten to know him personally, and I can tell you he's for real. He believes what he's saying and what happened to him in Peru. And I know he's a person who means well and who's done a lot of good. And he is, I mean, I've had dinner with him many times, hung out with him. He's real. And I know I'm real, and I can tell you're real. And that's what they're scared of, is people whose soul points towards the North Star of truth, because the globalists are the people of the lie. Now, I'm ranting while you're here, but your take on what I just said.
Well, my take on what you just said, I was smiling as you were talking because I realized that one of the things, I think I may have said this about you somewhere, you know, some people find your voice really hard to take, but I don't. I think until we hear a voice like yours, ranting or whatever you're doing, we haven't heard from all the people. And so it's very important to have voices that are different, voices that are, you know, carrying on and being themselves, in order for us to find our way. You know, and I say that coming from, you know, the segregation where all of our voices were silenced. You know, we could only basically speak through song, and that's what we did. And that's why our music struck, you know, the people around us, the white people, as being weird. And they wouldn't put us on the radio, you know. Anyway, so yes, I think that when you feel that people are sincere, that they, whatever you dislike about what they're saying, or you're afraid of what they're saying, but if you feel the sincerity that is there, it's worth stopping just long enough to hear what they're saying, and also to take issue, if you have time, with what you don't agree with or understand.
Absolutely. And again, anything the establishment is against, I'm for. They do not want us communicating with each other. And I do sometimes, you know, have that raspy, almost hysterical voice. And it's because I see intellectually all the growing corruption, the growing evil. I feel it.
I know. And
I get desperate. And I think one reason I've been successful is it is like an animal's cry warning the rest of the troop. And that's why it gets through to people, because deep in my gut, I am really concerned.
Yeah, and you were born on February 11th, so you're a revolutionary, and you're, you know, a little crazy. And that's, I was born on the 9th. That's how I know. You're just, you know, who you are. You're this expression, and you have a right to be this way, you know, and people, I hope, will just, you know, take issue with things that they don't like, but hear the parts that make sense to them, and try to understand your vantage point. It's crucial that we understand each other, that we try, that we make it. It's a matter of respect, and this you find in indigenous cultures, where, you know, I've been in all kinds of, you know, indigenous settings where I'm just moved to tears by the humility of people letting you be long enough to actually, you know, ferret out what it is you're trying to say to them, I mean, often in a different language. And we have to learn this.
You know, you just hit on something there that is so key, that I've been almost obsessed with in the last few months as I got a little bit older, 40 years old, and I'm getting a little bit of knowledge and wisdom, that the modern narcissistic fake arrogance is where people disrespect you to make themselves feel good. They do it to themselves. It's this dehumanizing thing that the modern plastic New World Order culture pushes. But when you get around even third world people or tribal people or even rural people in the middle of Spain or something, it doesn't matter. They're all the same. They're so respectful. Their soul is right there. And they have love in their eyes. I'm not romanticizing them, but compared to modern plastic Hollywood people, it is just night and day, and it makes me want to run away to some rural place. You see what I'm talking about?
Of course I do. I live in Mexico half of the year for that very reason. I mean, I know that Mexico has a million problems, but there's something to be said for living among people who are still fully human in their, in their smiles, in their eyes, in the way that they, honor the earth and think about nature. And, and they're not all in little cages and boxes yet, I mean, it's worth being with people who, who still know that they're just, like everything else here. I mean, they're like the trees and the bushes and the flowers and the other animals. And we depend on this earth that we live on.
Powerful. David Knight, my co-host, is here with me right now. He's a big fan of your work. David, you've got any questions for this lady?
Well, I saw an interview that you did on the anniversary of your of The Color Purple, where you were talking about the characters, and you said that you wrote the book because you wanted to spend time with your grandparents and your parents who are dead, and that really struck me. I think what's so compelling about your work is the reality of the characters and how that breaks down barriers and between different groups.
And then we're connected to our ancestors.
Exactly, exactly.
Well, imagine people being afraid of their ancestors, which is what you find in our culture.
Mm-hmm.
People are actually afraid of who they were.
Or contemptuous of them.
Or contemptuous,
Mm-hmm.
and you just have to find them in yourself and love them. You have to really go back there and understand them and try to. That's what I was doing in that particular book, in The Color Purple. I wanted to spend time with these grandparents, these grandfathers who had come down, in story in my life as these hellish old men. Well, they were hellish young men. By the time I knew them, they were beautiful old men. So I wanted to understand what transformed them. And this is worth thinking about. What is it that transforms us? What is it? There's something that can make us understand. It can humble us and can move our hearts. What is that? Is that just, aging? I don't think so, because there's very mean old people. But something, and that is worth getting in touch with in each and every one of us.
Well, you either get more loving as you get older or you get more evil. You either become like you or you become like Emperor Palpatine. Yeah.
Well, there's not much leeway there.
Well, Alice, I think that your work and just books and movies, I think, had so much to do with people my age. I'm from the South. I think it had so much more to do with changing people's hearts and minds than any of the mandates and policies and laws that the government did. My experience from the other side of this was that just hardened people, but it was the stories. Jesus taught with parables. It was the stories that people told. It was To Kill a Mockingbird, where it humanized everybody.
It's like The Jungle ended a lot of the really bad factory stuff.
Yeah, yeah. And then when we get to yours, you just start from the standpoint that, we're just people. And you're just brought into it with these compelling characters that everybody can identify with.
But you have to remember, though, that it was some of the laws that made it possible for us to have a school.
Yes, yes.
So we had one microscope, and it was broken.
Mm-hmm.
So we mustn't, don't forget that some of the things that we achieved actually helped us to be able to tell the story in a way that could reach more people than the fireside at home.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I totally agree. There's been some good laws because good people were in government at certain levels. Now it's so corporate, they can turn the best thing that's done and twist it into something evil. I think there's been a confluence of that, but I agree with you. Your sense of a major change about to come, and you talk about talking to other people that are informed and researching, that a quickening's happening. Can you continue to talk about that?
Well, I think we must. I think we must quicken. Actually, we are quickening whether we want to or not. And it's just a matter of how we go down. If we're going down, how do we want to go down? I would prefer to go down in consciousness, you know, with people who love me and people that I love, and with the earth, and you know, and affirming to her that yes, I have done everything I could do. You know, I have, you know, done everything I could do. And thank you so much for, you know, bearing with me all these years, speaking to the Mother, to Mother Earth. And sometimes I feel that that is possibly the highest aim in these times, because we're in such dire straits.
Speaking about, I'm just thinking about what you're saying. Looking at the political system and the attempts now to restrict free speech, the different educational systems that are clearly dumbing people down, just as you were repressed and suppressed from being able to have access to education as a tool of control. The more money we spend on education now, the worse it gets. The people in the general system are working hard against it, even though they're compartmentalized and don't see the whole thing. But, you know, when they start teaching people that 2 + 2 = 5, this is an attempt to bring in a new medieval era, in my view. What is your take on this corporate culture?
Oh, it's a disaster, as is male rule, as is white supremacy, as is the whole system. It is a system that will never serve us. We may as well, you know, get that clear. We don't have a democracy, and I knew that from, you know, a 5-year-old. I mean, how can we have a democracy when only the white people had sufficient food, clothing, and shelter, and we didn't? And, you know, anyway. So
no, expand on that, because the big banks are pretty much tax exempt, but they're the ones lobbying to raise taxes on the middle class and calling for wealth redistribution. But just as you said, if the whites can have everything they want, then who cares about the blacks in the old system? If the ultra-rich can be exempt from the laws they put on us, then we're going to all be slaves.
Well, yeah, well, that's right. I think one of the things, see now here's a silver lining, a bitter silver lining. I think white people, as long as we were slaves and could be identified by our color, really assumed that they would never be slaves, you know, and they would always be in control, even though they might be poor white, you know, because they still could lord it over us because we were black.
Sure, the sharecroppers were just as bad off almost, but at least they could be mean to a black person.
And this is what is being learned now, and I'm grateful. I mean, I think without this period, many white people would never really get a look at the system. They're really getting a close-up of what we have seen all our lives and before. So in that sense, you know, enlightenment is happening. I like to call it endarkenment.
Yeah. Absolutely. Wow.
It's kind of like what Russell Means said about, you know, in his book, Where White Men Fear to Tread. He said, the federal government broke every treaty that it made with us, and now it's breaking your treaty, the Constitution, with you. I mean, we're seeing that everybody is essentially being treated as they did the Indians, well, on a reservation, essentially.
Because it's all about exploitation.
Yes.
They don't really care, really. Actually, I mean, your skin is not going to save you. So that's a good thing. I mean, that's a good thing to know.
Man, but don't they get that when you exploit somebody else, it always comes back on you?
No, they don't care about that. No. And it hasn't come back on them in the way that you would think. I mean, they still are in control. These are some of the same people. For instance, I was just telling a group, I went to the Howard Zinn installation of his papers at NYU, and we were talking about that, you know, about how people don't really care about things going back on them because the same families still own all the stuff. And the Queen of England owns 6.6 billion acres of the world. And how many billions of dollars? And I, you know, said, well, and this woman has not worked a day in her life. And someone said, well, she has to carry that handbag, you know. But there it is. I mean, you know, they don't think about this the same way that we do, I think, because they have been in control for so long.
What an abomination and a relic of tyranny royalty is. You know what? I know you can only stay at the bottom of the hour. Can you do 5 more minutes so I can ask a few other questions?
Sure.
Oh, you're a sweetheart. I'll find out how long she can really stay when we come back. Just slowly get her on the show with us here. But because I want you just to have the floor, talk about whatever you want. instead of David and I throwing out some questions, and I've got a few more. Well, she is the Pulitzer Prize winner of The Color Purple. Alice Walker is our guest. Her website is alicewalkersgarden.com, and we're trying to provoke thought here. I think we're doing it.
We're on the march. The Empire's on the run.